We have
Who also
completely
another
lost
good
the
chair?
DG.
I can hear you very well, Chairperson.
Yeah, it's you that we cannot hear.
Okay, DG Fini will do it. Okay, DG Fini will do it.
All
Okay,
right.
that's fine, Chair.
All right.
Uploaded the presentation on the screen. I hope all members can see it.
What's happening?
As the DG explained, we're going to look at the fourth quarter report, a summary of the fourth quarter and
Okay.
additional inputs
Can
not in the
you hold a bit?
APP,
Can you hold a bit?
a
Let me
high-level
ask the
overview of the
members to
impact of
mute their
PC's
mic.
intervention.
Raise the voice.
We're going to briefly look at the
the
financial
voice,
report,
Other members must
report
please
on the
mute their
implementation of our
mics.
action plans is attached, and then lastly we will touch on the irregular, fruitless and wasteful expenditure.
Have we lost you as well? Or you are still scrolling up? Okay.
We met all the targets in respect of the 21. We had additional targets, and that's both routine targets and ad hoc targets that's outside the APP, and they are reflected on in this report. We look at Program 1 administration. We had basically on that first slide, we had 3 targets. It's the approved annual performance plan, which was met, the unqualified audit report, which was met, and the 100% payment of valid invoices within 30 days, and that was also 100%. The next slide under administration deals with the number of interim financial statements submitted to the National Treasury. We submitted 1 per quarter. The PAIA Section 15 notice that was submitted to the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. And then the percentage of BBBEE suppliers appointed by March, which the target was 10%, and we attained 58%, 45 out of 78 suppliers were BBBEE compliant. And then lastly, we submitted 4 risk management reports. We can move then to Program 2, Leadership and Management Practice. The first slide basically deals with the management of grievances, and the targets we set there overall for grievances of levels 1 to 12, as well as grievances of SMS members, was 80%. In respect to employees on levels 1 to 12, the target was exceeded. We attained 84%, exceeding it by 4%. And if you look at the SMS, the target was also 80%, and we exceeded the target with 92%. Then on the next slide, if we look at the number of reports on the management of grievances, we submitted a fact sheet in the fourth quarter. Annually, we concluded 3 reports. It includes the fact sheet and 2 biannual reports. The number of communiques on grievance management, we issued a first and a second communique in September and March 2020, respectively. Then the number of research reports and strategic human resource reviews, we planned 2, and the target was exceeded because we produced 3. The reports pertain to authorities, HODs and senior management, and other staff on prescripts and legislative requirements for the new administration. The roundtable report on contract appointments in the public service, which was concluded in March 2020, as well as an interim report on investigative analysis into the performance of selected departments in the public service. In the fourth quarter in that particular branch, we concluded a study on the performance of the public service on the restitution of land rights through assessing, amongst others, the organizational structure, skills, capacity and performance and management of human resource, as well as leadership put in place to ensure implementation of the land restitution mandate. We also engage with various stakeholders on employment equity implementation challenges and solutions in the public service at the Commission for Employment Equity Strategic Partner Symposium. Then if we look at impact, in respect of influence on government policy, the PSC's investigation on grievances that are referred to it, as well as the monitoring of the management of grievances by all departments, has enabled the PSC to address policy gaps and consistent practices with specific departments and the DPSA in a holistic manner. Various systematic issues identified through grievance management are addressed in detail through well-researched articles that are published. Those are the communiques that we referred to earlier, and also which is circulated to labour relations officers and departments. In respect of strengthened stakeholder relations and engagement on topical issues, the PSC has collaborated with bargaining councils in making presentations to national and provincial departments in order to improve sound labour relations and to advocate for the implementation of recommendations made in respect of various labour grievance cases and labour relations reports. And a few examples is the 20th anniversary conference of the GPSSBC. We co-hosted a workshop with the Public Health and Social Development Sectoral Bargaining Council, as well as the National and Gauteng Province Departments of Health. We convened a strategic engagement session on unfair treatment for the South African Police Service. We hosted a roundtable on challenges experienced in relation to the moderation of performance assessments by departments. And these challenges we picked up from the grievances that we dealt with. We presented a report on the extent and nature of contract appointments in the public service to this portfolio committee, and we hosted a roundtable on the extent and nature of contract appointments in the public service. Then further on strengthening stakeholder relations, in addition to providing clarity on numerous issues related to human resource management and leadership, as well as labour relations, the engagements with various stakeholders serve to ensure common understanding of challenges, intervention strategies and policy gaps, whilst also strengthening relations between the PSC and stakeholders. In short, it is important to note that there's a logical flow between the PSC's investigations on labour relations and HRM issues with the various strategic engagements, presentations, research and publications, in the sense that investigations deals with specific incidental cases, while research and engagements address key issues at the broader policy level and popularise findings and recommendations of the PSC to the broader public service in order to ensure consistency, capacitate departments or groups of employees across all departments and prevent the recurrence of similar challenges. I'm moving to the next branch, that is monitoring and evaluation. On the first slide, we deal with a number of constitutional values and principles promotion engagements, which was held as at the end of 31 March. Annually, we plan 10, and we exceeded the target by because we finalized 54 engagements. And this was due to invitations and seizing opportunities and requests from stakeholders that we managed to exceed the target. Then last one on that slide is the number of reports and evaluations of departments against the CVPs produced. We produced 12, and that is in line with the target set in advance. Then during the period of review, we didn't include inspections initially in our APP because of a lack of funding, but due to service delivery demands, we did conduct visits to several hospitals during the financial year, and those hospital visits, the purpose thereof was to embed the values of professional ethics, accountability and responsiveness in public service servants' daily interface with citizens. And the PSC adopted a hybrid method of inspections and dialogues on the CVPs. We produced a report on the Public Service Month activities and submitted it to the DPSA in March 2020. We produced a report on the review of the appropriateness of the constitutional values and principles content of the National School of Government course material. And then we developed a constitutional and principles, values and principles booklet, which aims to embed a shared understanding of the CVPs and provide a norm of what can be expected from the public administration, and most importantly, to encourage the application of the values and principles in the delivery of services. If we look at impact, the hospital visits that we conducted resulted in additional beds being provided to address overcrowding, for instance, in the Mamelodi Hospital. We know that that was a very public issue that was investigated by the PSC. Work in progress to address structural defects at the Beki, Mlangeni and the Tembisa hospitals. And eye treatment equipment was procured for the Charlotte Mateke Hospital, and surgical backlogs were resolved by referring patients to neighbouring hospitals in respect to George Mukari Hospital. Then in respect of government's responsiveness to support the growing SMME economy, we received several complaints from stakeholders regarding the non-payment of service providers within 30 days, and specifically in the period, the last quarter, we dealt with 5 service providers, 1 in Gauteng, 1 in Limpopo, 2 in the Northern Cape, and 1 at national level. And through the rigorous engagement by the PSC, the responsible departments or agencies made these payments to the complainants. Just to reflect on, since the lockdown in March, the PSC also worked on service with service delivery departments to ensure services were rendered and the needs of citizens were responded to. And we have put some examples there, and we liaised with the South African Police Service to ensure that permits were issued to citizens where there were blockages. Suppliers who were not paid their money due to the closure of departments were subsequently paid through the PSC's intervention. In certain parts of the country where citizens did not have water, the PSC intervened with the Department of Water and Sanitation, and relevant municipality and water tanks were delivered. And the PSC has further engaged with the SASSA on the 350 Rand in unemployment grant, and citizens were paid after this intervention. If we can move to the program integrity and anti-corruption. The first target or indicator refers to the percentage of public administration investigations finalized. We exceeded the target there. We plan to do 70, and we finalized 96% of the targets as at 31 March. And the target was exceeded due to close monitoring of investigations. Then also we published a fact sheet on financial misconduct in November 2019. On the next slide, the percentage of National Anti-Corruption Hotline cases referred within 7 working days of receipt. Our target there is 90%, and throughout the 4 quarters, we attained a target of 100%, and it was also due to close monitoring of compliance with timeframes. Then the number of reports produced on the closure of NACH cases, we plan to produce 1 report during the financial year, and it was produced in March 2020, as well as an overview report on the financial disclosure framework. On the next slide, we planned to finalize 1 research report, and this was on the assessment of professional ethics in the public service, and it was produced in March 2020. And then also the percentage of investigations of early resolution, which is finalized within 45 days. We planned, our target was 90%. We exceeded it throughout the financial year. We attained 100%, and it was also through close monitoring and then also follow-ups, rigorous follow-ups with relevant departments. On the next slide, if we go to the issue of impact, when we looked at enhanced advocacy and compliance, public administration related investigation mainly focused on the alleged transgression of the prevailing prescripts regulating human resource and supply chain management practices. Departments are sensitized regarding the regulatory framework, as well as the importance of adhering to the framework, since non-adherence has serious implications. The impact of public administration investigation centers around the findings and recommendations reflected in our investigation reports. And in this regard, care is taken to ensure that sound public administration is enhanced by also reflecting in reports on the adherence to the CVPs. Then, in respect of enhanced responsiveness to citizens on complaints lodged via the National Anti-Corruption Hotline, we monitored the effectiveness of the National Anti-Corruption Hotline and ensured that complainants are provided with feedback on complaints lodged via the National Anti-Corruption Hotline as a form of responsiveness to call on promoting anti-corruption practices in the public service. Then, continued government support to promoting professional ethical behavior of public servants. We promote compliance levels of public servants by analyzing compliance practices against the and promoting management of conflicts of interest with regard to the financial disclosure framework. In respect of advocacy, with regard to the research reports on professional ethics, the report provided an assessment of the extent of leadership commitment in ensuring compliance with the regulations and creating awareness among sample departments on the prescripts relating to the implementation of ethical and anti-corruption measures. The next part of the report is the financial report. Our expenditure Our expenditure against the budget, the committee will observe that we spent 98.68% of our budget with a variance of 1.32% and an underspending of 3.6 million. This was largely ascribed to CETA not delivering the services in time prior to the lockdown, and the PSC has requested a rollover of the funding from the National Treasury. The next slide is just the breakdown per program and the breakdown per economic classification. And then if we can go to the last slide, that is the irregular expenditure. There's an amount of 555,472 Rand, and this is a carry through from the 2018-19 financial year where the PSC procured a telephone system not through the CETA, and it is thus not new irregular expenditure on the books of the PSC. This is, however, a preliminary amount because we have not concluded the audit with the Auditor General yet. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Slalo. Chairperson.
Yeah.
Hello,
Okay.
Chairperson.
Yes, I can hear, Comrade.
We are through with our presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Advocate. That presentation is now open for discussions by the Portfolio Committee. Any indications from members of the Portfolio Committee?
Each person will answer all the questions.
Chairperson, I'd like to ask a question, please.
Okay, Honorable Clerk.
Thank you, Chairperson. Just recently, we've heard in the news that medical negligence claims are costing the state over 104 billion Rand. Chairperson, can I please ask whether we would be able to get a report from the PSC in terms of these negligence claims, so that we can really see how long these claims have been outstanding, and see how we're going to move forward in order of resolving these claims, because it's costing the state a huge amount of money. Also, the same thing, with the suspensions, and I know that the Minister has come back and said regarding my press article that the information was not correct. But Chairperson, I received the information in a written question to the department around suspensions where people are at home for over 420 days and what the cost factor is to the state. So we really need to get a report in terms of the suspensions as well. And then also, Chairperson, I'd also like to just ask, I came in a little bit late onto the meeting because I was battling with my connection, but what is the current status of the investigation into the allegations that the DG of the PEC hired the mother of his child in the position of the chief director? What is the status of that investigation? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Clerk. Can I get another hand? Is that all from members? Okay, can I give the chair of the commission to respond to the questions that the Honorable Clerk has raised?
Okay. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Honorable Clerk, can you hear me?
You are breaking up, Advocate. I'm asking other members to mute when they are not speaking.
Yeah. Is Honorable Clerk hearing?
I can hear you. I can hear you, Advocate.
Yeah, and Honorable Clerk, you are right. We have for some years now observed that once we had closed the tap on third-party claims, the corruption and the claims moved towards the area of medical negligence. Gauteng, looting, and Eastern Cape, in the amounts of money that are being taken. And what we found is that even where government, for instance, is conceding the case, they don't put in a strong argument in mitigating what has happened. So quite a lot of lawyers working together with some doctors have been able to cream the system quite a lot. What Minister Mkhize has done now, the Minister of Health, he has set up a task team where he is working with the SIU, the Hawks, and the departmental officials and others to try and weed out this thing. But I want to confirm with you, this 4 billion is just smaller. It's a huge amount that we lose through medical negligence. So the Department of Health has the information, and Minister Mkhize is leading that. On the issue of precautionary suspension, ourselves as a Public Service Commission, we have always been extremely worried about the number of officials who are staying at home and are paid amounts without actually the 60 days that have to be followed after suspension to do the disciplinary case. It does bother us. We have raised it in many meetings and other areas. What also worries us? What also worries us is that some of the officials who have come to us, we have advised them to go to court, to say go to court or turn up at work. When they turn up at work, they get resuspended. They go to court, they win that they must be allowed to work back now because the 60 days has passed, and still a department would refuse to accept them back. It is a problem. And we have also found that the grounds for suspension, precautionary suspensions, are not followed because there are options there. One of the options is that you can transfer a person to another place. Of course, you can suspend the person if it's going to interfere with investigation and so on. And thirdly, Of course, if there's done a serious thing that will besmirch the name of the department. Sometimes people get suspended for reasons not of refusing to carry out lawful instructions and other things. So, and get marginalized. There is a number of officials we have found who are marginalized through the use of precautionary suspension. We are worried about it. It's a matter that we should follow up. So I would agree with you. It's a matter that we must take seriously. I had already reported about the matter of the Director General. The investigation is still continuing, and we are waiting for the report. It is done by an independent group. It's supervised by our Minister of Public Service and Administration. So that investigation is still continuing. It's not finished. There have been delays, and the delays, of course, have been through COVID, where people had closed offices. But it is investigating, and it is taken seriously. Thank you very much, Honorable Clerk.
Advocate Susan. Any question from other members?
Chairperson?
Honorable Clerk?
Chairperson, I would like to make a recommendation to our committee that we have a joint meeting with the Department of Health to see how, to see how far they are with these investigations, because this obviously also affects our departments as well. So, 104 billion rand is a lot of money. And, if the Minister of Health has taken steps to ensure that they're going to investigate fraud and corruption around these claims, then I would really like our committee to also be presented with a report as to how far they are with that process and what the outcomes are of that process. And then, just on the suspensions as well, we need to find some kind of way how to deal with this matter, because it's costing this government a huge amount of money, which we can ill afford at the moment. And, I think in many aspects, when I look at a lot of these cases, malfeasance really plays a big role in this, in this whole process as well. And, I don't think this situation can continue. I mean, the departments must tell us how they're going to deal with it and give us proper progress on that. Thank you.
Okay. That is noted, Honorable Clerk. I think from my office, I will organize as you have suggested, so that we have that discussion with the Department of Health. I will do that. Is there any other member who wants to put a question to Public Service Commission?
Chair is Lesoma.
Okay, Honorable Soma.
Good evening, colleagues. I just want to build on what Honorable Clark as a suggestion that probably we need to say, because we have prioritized, I think, about the 3 departments that we said we want to focus, 4 departments, then probably we are adding to say one of our also priorities for our term in particular is to deal with the HR-related matters, especially where a huge sum of money gets wasted, so to speak, through disciplinary actions that are not concluded, which are ever pending. Because I think it was 2 months back, we did receive a financial breakdown, how many cases, how much is being spent, and how many people are suspended based on departments as well, and also those cases that we lose at court. So I'm saying that probably let's look at that holistically and say these are the departments that we'll focus on in terms of the big amounts. I know also even water and sanitation also is one of the culprits in that space. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other member? Can I then say we have concluded with the Public Service Commission? And then yes, we will now go to the National School of Government. But before that, I will invite the Deputy Minister to make that opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I just wanted to say thank you very much, Chairperson, to you and the members.
Okay, okay, Advocate. Thank you. Thank you, Advocate. DM?
No, thank you very much, Chairperson and the honorable members, colleagues from the MPSA portfolio. Chair, we want again to appreciate the opportunity given to us to account not only to the portfolio committee, but to the people of South Africa on how we are spending their hard-earned taxes. We take this seriously, and it is for that reason that we always try to be present. If the deputy minister is not able, the minister attends. If the minister is not able, the deputy minister attends. And therefore, we're here representing both the minister and the deputy minister. Chair, just on Tuesday, the 23rd, as South Africa, we joined member states of AU in celebrating the Africa Public Service Day. As South Africa, we thought that it's important for us to do that, particularly looking at the role that our public servants played during and even now during the pandemic, which is COVID-19. We still are committed to what's building a state that is professional, a state that is productive, responsive, and a state that is ethical, and public service that is ethical in its conduct. We are here, Chairperson, with the senior managers from our portfolio. We do have the principal of the school who is going to take us through his presentation. There are highlights that I think he will be reporting on, and of course, he's going to take us through the whole presentation. Let me now hand over to the principal.
Thank you, Deputy Minister.
Thank you,
Professor
Chair.
Rowan, come in.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, DM, for the introduction. Thank you to all the honorable members in the meeting today. We welcome this opportunity again as a NSG and also as a portfolio to engage with the portfolio committee. Myself and the DPSA have been in this work for 110 days today. So this should be looked in that context. And to say, Chair, that the support we are receiving from the minister and the deputy minister is very welcome for us in this portfolio. And we are working and coordinating as a portfolio. So in our presentations, there will be cross-reference to NSG, the PSC, the Center for Public Service Innovation, as well as the DPSA. That's because of how we are coordinating the work we are doing in the MPSA portfolio. As indicated, Chair, we've been here for 110 days. Today, it's been important for us in the last month of the financial year that we reporting here that we are stabilizing the institutions. So the month of March could be seen as part of that stabilization of the institution. The minister insisted in both our cases with DPSA DG that we should start in the 1st of March so that we are part of finalizing the strategy for the new financial year, but also to see off the last month of the financial year that we are reporting. So we're stabilizing, we are filling vacant positions in the institutions. There's been a lot of acting at NSG, and we are resolving that matter. We're meeting with the minister and the DM regularly, both ourselves as NSG and the minister and DM, but also ourselves as a portfolio. We meet actually twice a month at least, and started doing that in March. We have our strategy, which we have presented before the portfolio committee. It's important to note that in our strategy, Chair and the honorable members, we already factored in COVID, and this is a major issue for us as NSG. We, as a result of the lockdown, the NSG, which receives 20% of its budget and 80% from self-funding, we're losing revenue of over 10 million rands a month. We must state this again to the committee, because we do have a deficit already in the first quarter of the current financial year, because 80% of our budget is self-generated. So with the suspension of classes since the middle of March, we have zero revenue, and we're running on a deficit, and there's a strategy in place to try and recover that. One of the key programs we're working on now, and is featured in our new strategy, is on behalf of the portfolio, is that of working towards the professionalization of the public service. So that should be part and parcel of the backdrop of our presentation. We have a new service delivery model, and we are dealing with some of the issues where departments prepaid 3 years ago or 4 years ago, but people never showed up for training. That money sits in our trading account, and we will speak to that shortly. And these are the issues that had been raised in the audit in the past financial year. And I'm just saying we are dealing with those. And if you do allow, Chair, I'll ask my colleague, the Chief Director who leads our strategy, to do the presentation very briefly, and I can come back to summarize later on. But just to assure the members that even the matters raised in the previous meetings, we are attending to each and everything that is raised by members of the committee and by the auditors, and that there's a new NSG that is in the making currently. When we report next, especially after COVID, you will have a totally different report from the ones we've received thus far. So through you, Chair, I'll request Dino to run through the presentation quickly, and then I'll come back later. Thank you.
Okay, you can come in.
Good evening, Honorable Chairperson, the honorable members of Portfolio Committee, Deputy Minister Chikunga, the Chairperson of the Commission, the MPSA portfolio heads and colleagues. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity, Chairperson, to present. I'll provide us on the first slide a summary of our performance, which is against the approved annual performance plan for the 2019-2020 financial year. As the principal has indicated, Chair, there has been some impact of the COVID pandemic. Traditionally, what happens is in the quarters, the fourth quarter of the financial year is generally, one of the better performing quarters for training. And when we compare the last quarter of this financial year with the previous quarters, this has not been one of the better performing periods. As we've already indicated to the Portfolio Committee when we presented the strategic plan, there has been losses that have been incurred, to the amounts in excess of 10 million a month due to class cancellations. Chair, we're also saying that the report is being presented within a year that has, seen the transition from the 5th to the 6th administration, that brought about certain changes in the macro organization of government. But despite this, the school had set a target of 53,783, and we trained 46,469, which is about 86% of the target. The revenue generation by the end of the quarter was at 126 million. When we look at the quarterly targets, Chairperson, that we had set out in the APP, there are 4 targets that have not been achieved by the end of the quarter as we had planned, which translates to a performance of 87%. Of course, the National School of Government has 2 programs, Program 1 Administration and Program 2, which is the trade account or the trading account. And so we'll deal with all of the performances in the 2 programs, Chairperson. But just to indicate that all of this is subject to the external audit process. We are currently busy with the Auditor General's office in terms of the audit process. Just to highlight some of the performance areas in this quarter, Chairperson, we had indicated previously the pre-entry program for senior managers, which is the Nukela program. We had launched that in July 2019. We went live. And this continues to be rolled out, Chairperson, and we'll show later on in the slides what have been the rate of enrollment and the completion so far since the start of the program. But it's a key program for us as we look towards the point the principal made around the professionalization of the public service, which serves as a key entry point. And the honourable members will note that as vacancies are now being advertised in the vacancy circular, this is being put in as a requirement for the appointment process. Chair, we've also undertaken some of the executive induction programs with DDGs and DGs. We had 6 delegates that came from national departments from Limpopo, Eastern Cape, KZN, and Northwest Province. And we invited some of the one current DG as well as the former DG of DPME, Mr. Mpumi Mpofu, who is now the CEO of AXA, to be part of this executive induction program. The training of youth, Chairperson, we will talk to that in terms of the broader numbers. In this quarter, though, we had trained 350 youth from the Northwest Province. And as we had indicated in the new strategic plan, our focus is now shifting from what the committee would know. We had referred to the Breaking Barriers to Entry program. We're now referring to it as a cadet program. We've also supported the Limpopo Provincial Treasury with the rollout of courses for procurement. And there's also a partnership with the city of Joburg, the cohort of councillors. They've now completed all 5 modules of the local government development program. And then some of the other work that we're doing, Chairperson, in terms of coaching and leadership. The panel of experts is what the school uses in as far as the facilitation of training. And we've been in the process of finalizing that, of course, during the last quarter with the effects of the lockdown. We're not able to complete all of the processes in terms of the recruitment of panel of experts, but certainly we had undertaken a lot of that through virtual processes. Chair, what we thought is important to also reflect to you is as we move into the end of the financial year, we note, Chair, that this is the last quarter of of this financial year, but it's also the last quarter of a 5-year strategic planning period, which ends now in 2020. And we thought, mindful of the fact that we will still come back to the portfolio committee on our annual report, but we should just flag some of the areas of performance that we've had thus far. So, so in terms of the annual performance, as I've indicated, the 46,000, the Nukela program, and these are the numbers that we've rolled out. The training needs analysis, which we had undertaken, in the quarter as well as, annually. So 13 training needs analysis with departments. The NSG offering of 27 online learning courses, and more now during the period of lockdown, we've seen some steady uptake of the programs. In terms of the employment equity within the NSG, Chairperson, there is a fair representation of gender, the females at 57.5%, at the SMS level 55.8%. The one target we are aware of, Chairperson, is around the youth. We are 24.1%. But as the principal has indicated, the process of filling vacancies is now underway. We'll have to look at that process so that we are able to achieve the target on youth. With regard to expenditure on the vote, Chairperson, I will indicate the slides on the financial performance, but just to note that the expenditure on the vote account has been at 97%, and on the trade account 89%. The 3% underspending on the vote is largely due to vacancies, which some of which have been filled up, and the trade account was largely due to the sort of minimized number of training classes that we had. So if we go into the two programs, Chairperson, before we go into those programs, just to highlight, I think the issue that is that we have always engaged with the portfolio committee is the impact of training, and we thought we should share some of the work that we are doing around this. So very briefly, Chair, just in terms of the impact of NSG training, we are undertaking the learner satisfaction surveys, which is completed by every participant at the end of every training session. And we've shown, so far there's a score of around 90% or above that learners are satisfied both with the training as well as the quality of facilitators. We are undertaking several evaluation studies, Chairperson. We've just indicated 3 there. the disability management in public service, the gender mainstreaming in the public service, as well as the CAEDU program, and how participants feel about these programs. In going forward, Chairperson, we will be focusing a lot on the application of learning, which is the outcome, as well as conducting evaluations that will look at the impact produced by the NSG interventions. And I think importantly, Chair, is our shift that we have made within the organization as well. The unit that is normally responsible for the monitoring and evaluation will now be focused around impact and outcomes. So it's the Chief Directorate that will be focusing on impact and outcomes. So this is just to share with the Portfolio Committee Chair some of our thinking around the impact of the NSG training. We do understand there's a lot more that we would have to do in this space, but this is the work that we are doing. Chair, if you'll allow me, in terms of the fourth quarter performance, this is Program 1, the targets that have been achieved. Just some of the highlights to indicate, Chairperson, that we've made all payments within the prescribed 30 days. The revenue generation target that we had set, the vacancy rate, which is below the 10% threshold at 8.2%. But Chair, I think importantly, as the Deputy Minister has alluded to the Africa Public Service Day, if we move to the next slide, is just to indicate, some of the work that we've been doing with the public service institutions on the African continent. And I think importantly here, Chair, if you look at the next slide, regarding the work of capacity building on the African continent, one of the programs is the CAEDU program, which has now been customized for some of the countries on the continent, which we have been busy rolling out. And due to the COVID lockdown, we were not able to continue with some of the countries, but certainly this is work that we are doing, including the work around the African governance program that we are focusing on. So these are some of the targets that we have achieved, Chairperson. The principal has indicated the service delivery model that we have finalized. We've presented this to the Minister, and we are in the final stages of that now to look at the implementation of the model. On the target not achieved, Chair, there's just one for the quarter, and we will look at this as we now finalize the audit for the financial year. So this is one in terms of the debt collection. The principal has alluded to some of the issues around the payments that have been made to the school, and where learners have not been attending. This is work that is now being taken forward through the National Treasury. With regard to Program 2, Chairperson, which is the core function for the school in terms of training, these are all targets that have been achieved with regard to research projects, which informs the work that we do, the training and development, the training needs analysis, which we do with public sector institutions that also begin to inform the kind of training interventions that we have to undertake, and some of the other areas in terms of research. If we move to the next slide, Chairperson, you'll notice there also the work around the monitoring and evaluation. There have been 18 evaluations that we had conducted, and the application of learning studies, which we are busy with. The curriculum framework for the school, we manage programs and courses of 129 courses and programs. And during the course of this financial year, as we moved into that, we had done 6 new programs and courses, which is in line with the curriculum framework. The quality assurance of some of the programs to ensure that we meet quality standards. Of course, the school, being a provider of training, has got to maintain its accreditation status as a training provider, and so therefore we have to ensure the quality of the programs. And as I've indicated, Chairperson, the online courses that the school is offering. There are 3 targets, Chair, if we move to the next slide, around, which had not been achieved, which is purely around the training numbers. And if we look at this, Chairperson, there are 3 targets that we had set around the training numbers. The first being a target of 46,000, which is the induction program as well as demand-led training. There's a target achievement of 90% of these numbers. So we at 42,099 that has been achieved. On the unemployed youth graduates and the interns through the Breaking Barriers to Entry, the target was 3,000. We had trained 2,200, which is a 74% achievement. And on the training on the mandatory courses, which is a new program, we had initiated a new, through cabinet decision around the mandatory programs. We're targeted to train 4,000. There was 2,163 trained. This is work that we had done with the Northwest provincial government to support capacity development. And there have been 8 mandatory courses that we had rolled out. So these are some of the areas here, Chairperson, but of course, it's work that we have to look, going forward in the new financial year. On the target, for example, on the youth, Chair, you will note that now with interns, there is a 24-month, period of appointment of interns. So this obviously impacts on the annual intake of the interns in terms of this program. So it's something that we'll have to rethink how we roll out these programs, as well as the rollout of the mandatory courses going forward. In terms of the training performance per stream, Chairperson, of course, the school focuses on 4 broad streams. The administration stream had exceeded its target. The induction program is an area that we're not able to achieve the full target. The Breaking Barriers to Entry program, as I'd indicated, the leadership and management streams have both exceeded their targets, and on the mandatory program is where we had not achieved the target. So overall, there is an 86% achievement of that. But Chair, must indicate it is still subject to the Auditor General process and the reconciliation of the numbers. In terms of HR oversight information, Chairperson, I did indicate on the equity target, the vacancy rate at 8.2%, and a lot of the vacancies have been due to the to the repositioning of the school, as well as the budget around compensation of employees. But there is a process, Chairperson. In fact, today there was an advertisement for a Chief Director position for quality assurance, which has gone out. And so as forward, we will be filling all of the vacancies for which we are funded. On the financial performance, Chairperson, just to provide a context, the Portfolio Committee is aware of the trade account that we manage, the current funding model, which is made up of funding through appropriation by Parliament, and then the rest through the cost recovery from training courses. We had received a tariff increase in March 2020 from the National Treasury. And whilst this assists in as far as the revenue generation, the principal has indicated that in light of COVID-19, we are submitting, or we have submitted, a revised proposal to the National Treasury. But some of the interventions that their Chairperson will look at how we reconsider the tariffs. We are looking at additional data line within the National School of Government to support more online learning. The current line from, that we have from CETA is not sufficient. Chair, I think also with regard to the, the revenue recognition policy, this is just some information, the prepayments, how it works within the National School of Government, and in terms of the revenue recognition. On the next slide, Chairperson, is the breakdown of the voter count, and as I've indicated, there is an expenditure of 97%, and on the next slide, on the vote slide, there is an expenditure of 89%. So if we move forward, Chair, I think as I've indicated to the Chair and the honourable members, that this is the last quarter of the 5-year period as well, for which we have appeared on many occasions to the Portfolio Committee to report on our performance. I think importantly here to note, Chair, is that over the 5-year period, when we look at the training that we have provided, it has been in excess of 253,000 public servants that have been across 3 spheres of government, state-owned entities, the legislative sector, We've trained youth, both at unemployed youth graduates as well as interns, all within a course matrix that we have of 129 courses, both accredited, non-accredited. We've covered training that has extended to members of parliament, to municipal councillors, traditional leaders, community development workers, and we continue to do the training, Chair, through the training needs analysis, the skills audit. There have been a number of skills audits and training needs analysis that we have covered over this 5-year period that has spanned both government departments as well as state-owned entities. Just last week, Chairperson, the Minister announced the partnerships with universities, and we continue to roll these out with some of the programs that we deal with. We, of course, continue our reach, across, even remote places to train unemployed youth. And I think this is work that we will take forward going into the new area of our strategic plan. I can also indicate, Chairperson, that there's not been any fruitless or irregular expenditure, and all of the findings that we had received from the Auditor General in the past financial year, we've managed that within our improvement plan, and that will be tested against when the Auditor General does the final audit process. Chairperson, I think what is important in the succeeding slides, perhaps the principal may come into the conversation, is just to share, we're not going to go into all of the details, but to share how the school going forward is seeking to position itself as a premier training provider. And I think importantly, when we look at how we've realigned the motto of the school, learn, serve, grow, we begin to unpack all of this. And these are important aspects, as you've indicated, Chair, that the portfolio is working together, particularly around the professionalization of the public service and how all of these factor into the work that we are doing. I think importantly, if my colleague Pumla can just go into the slide that relates to the Nukela program, just to highlight, Chairperson, how we are rolling out this program. It's a fully